So tell me a little bit about Pinpoint. Like I secretly know a little bit because I met with Nolan and them, and when I saw it, here's how you got on the show. Like here's the progression of things. I saw this category emerge, and then I saw Pinpoint, and then I was like, dude, that's the Appcelerator guy.
Yeah.
And then I was like, this is awesome. Let's talk about Pinpoint.
Yeah. So, and you met Nolan. That's impressive. You know, Nolan. We don't let Nolan come out very often. Certainly not in public. So that's amazing. Did you actually see his face, or was it like a silhouette with like an avatar?
It was a silhouette with an avatar.
You only saw Nolan through the demo. You can only see Nolan through the demo. So, no, Nolan
specifically. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to tell you what he actually did. He actually used the iOS. He had like a teddy bear head.
That's true. That's pretty similar. Yeah, most employees aren't sure if he really exists, if he's like our AI or if he's a real person. I assure them he is definitely an AI. So we started Pinpoint after we sold Appcelerator, and we took some time off and helped the company that bought us transition, because we're developers at the end of the day, both of us, and we've built several development-oriented companies, and we were frustrated as we got to be a much larger company at Appcelerator, and then certainly after we got to see the acquiring company, how big they were. They were a lot bigger than we were, multi-thousand developer sort of organization, and we were really struggling with like, how do you measure engineering performance? How do you tie outcomes of the engineering organization to sort of the business outcomes that the business wants to achieve? How do you give engineering sort of a way to advocate for what they're working on and what's important and why they're making decisions? I mean, why are we going to go do this big React refactoring, or why are we going to do the CI/CD replatforming, or why do we need to move to the cloud, or what are these sort of inherently intrinsic things that happen inside of engineering that impact business, but aren't always easy to explain to business, and vice versa. Business helping sort of engineering understand where businesses needs engineering to be and where it's trying to go, and sort of how do you better build a language between engineering and non-engineering, and how do you really help engineering be better in performance, right? And ultimately get the highest value. Engineering becomes more and more important to every company in the globe as technology becomes more and more important to every company of every size. And we think that engineering is a trade, as a profession, is super important, and we think it's time really to treat it as such, and to provide engineering what it needs, and to help engineering, ultimately, how do you help engineers build software better?
This is why I pay for 2 internet connections. I'm so serious. I thought about not paying for 2, and then I was like, every once in a while, one is out. I don't know. How does that work over in Austin? You guys get outages every once in a while?
We haven't had too many problems here. We're in a shared building. We're in a WeWork, pretty big WeWork, and they've got really, really fast internet into this building, so we usually don't have any problems. Thank God. I think if we did have problems, we'd be screwed because there's nothing we can do.
Do you really have red bars right now for this interview?
No, it's now back to it's white, which I've not seen before. Usually it's like green, but it's not yellow or red that it was a few minutes ago. You actually sound better.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
We had the CIO of Zoom on last week, and his mic was scratching against his shirt, and I was like, dude, your audio quality is like horrible. He's like, that was my mic against my shirt. This is not a reflection of Zoom's audio quality.
I promise. Not even. That's awesome.
I was like, Harry,
are you sure?
Are you sure, buddy?
That's awesome.
They're a great company, though.
They are an amazing company.
Yeah, I really like them.
I mean, take a crappy product in general, right? I mean, and then they've definitely made it a lot better than the alternative, which is amazing. So.
Did you read their story when they IPO'd?
Which
like Eric's whole story about the whole thing?
Yeah.
About how he was at GoToMeeting.
Or GoToMeeting.
WebEx? Yeah. Sorry.
I think it was WebEx. He was at Cisco, right?
I don't know.
I think it was WebEx. He was an engineer. He was one of the top engineers, right?
Yeah, he was leading the program, and they wouldn't rewrite things, and they wouldn't listen to the customers, and he was just frustrated because he wanted it to work super well. And then he left and he did this.
That's a brilliant entrepreneur story, right?
Right.
That's awesome.
So let's talk about that why thing again.
Okay.
The moment the why gets lost, you and I are both engineers. I mean, we've been writing code for a very long time. And there's a point where you're like, oh, there's the need. You see it, you understand the why. And then you start turning that into specs and a to-do list and way to get things done, architecting it out. At some point, the why is detached and lost. At what point is it gone?
That's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of people don't even know the why. They focus too much on the how, right? And the when's always elusive for engineering, but we like to spend a lot of time talking about the how, right? I mean, a lot of the content, and that's sort of one of the problems I think we have as an industry. And this is not bad. I mean, it's not sort of an indictment of the industry, because I'm part of this, just like you are. We spend a lot of time talking about how things work, and to your point, a lot of things are detached from the why. Why do we do Kafka? And we talk about how it works, and we talk about when to use it and things like that. But like you said, the why, especially from a business standpoint. So a lot of people, and it's not because engineers don't care. I think it's quite the opposite. I actually think I had so many conversations with engineers that really want to understand, how is the customer using this software? Why are they using it? What are the use cases? How is it working? They want to sort of understand and be connected to that. But I think especially in larger organizations, it just gets lost. It's this big, usually matrix, especially the bigger organizations, and it's just, we have to do things because somebody else above us told us we have to go do that. And vice versa. Like, how do you advocate for the things that you are doing that really do have that impact? And that's hard, especially in engineers, because a lot of times engineering is just looked at as this big black box, because it is. It is a black box. It's hard to understand. Even like, I've been long enough in the industry to remember way before Agile. But I mean, Agile is a great example. I mean, love Agile. There's, again, nothing wrong with Agile, but it's purposely designed to be opaque, right? And to be sort of malleable between teams. So think about it from a business person's point of view. It's like, well, is it a pizza box or is it a t-shirt size? And if it's a pizza box on this team and it's t-shirt size, now that's helpful at the team level, certainly. But as you aggregate that up and look across an organization and look at it from a business standpoint, it's really, really frustrating, right? It's just a sort of really interesting set of opaque things that we don't really understand. We're always late. We always need more money. We always need more people. And it's sort of this one organization that, while it's the most important in a lot of companies, especially software-oriented companies, that's the tip of the spear in a lot of companies, and increasingly more and more companies, even non-technology companies. It's still this thing that's like, we have sort of Venus and Mars, right? How do you have a language between them? And it's difficult.
And so this is like what inspired you to start Pinpoint. You're like, we want to solve this problem.
We sort of said, like, we're engineers. Like, if we're engineers and when Nolan and I started Appcelerator, we built titanium. I mean, we were the engineers that the companies we like to build, or we like to build things that are directly relevant to us, And so when we started Appcelerator, we wanted to build mobile apps and applications, and we were having challenges, and we sort of said, like, we need a framework to make this easier and faster. And at the time, we were thinking about doing services and just sort of building things for other people, which we did for about a year and a half. And so we built titanium just because we were like, this is frustrating, right? And then all of a sudden we started showing it to a bunch of other developers, and they were all saying, wow, this is it's equally frustrating to me as well. Can I use what you're doing? And we open sourced it, and sort of the rest is history. But it was sort of the same thing. We got to be a much larger company, and we felt like we were best equipped to understand how the technology worked. And certainly as founders and executives, we understood the why. But there was always this disconnect, no matter how close we were to the product, no matter how much we could communicate with engineering, with other parts of the organization. There was still this very big disconnect often. And it wasn't because engineers weren't doing their job, or they were off doing the wrong things. It was just because it's difficult to synchronize back to the why. Why are we doing things? What are the outcomes we're trying to achieve? And all the stuff in the middle is sort of is sort of part of the process. It's the pipeline ultimately, right? I mean, and we want to optimize the pipeline, because what do we ultimately want to do is we ultimately want to build this new feature because it drives this new revenue, or we want to build this new thing because it solves an automation problem that we have, right? Yes, as engineers, we care also a lot about the how and the what and what it is, because we care about our craft and we want to build good things. But at the end of the day, why we as companies employ engineers are to build things and to do great, get great outcomes from what we build. And so we always felt like if we're the best in some ways, if we're the best equipped to understand and sort of empathize with what's happening in engineering, better than really in most companies, better than anybody, what is it like at a non-engineering oriented management team or a founder or a CEO that isn't that way, isn't well equipped, or isn't that close to what's happening on the ground? I mean, what's that like? We got that opportunity when we got acquired by this much larger public company, and we were like, and they weren't at all technical as a software company, but the leadership team, wonderful people, amazing business leaders, had no idea how this stuff worked. And so I spent a year in this transition, and Nolan and I sort of trying to help them do their own sort of transition as a company, but also then looking at like answering really simple questions as a business. And being an outsider coming into a new technology, I understood Appcelerator, but trying to understand the rest of their portfolio and how we could reconcile strategically what we go do, you basically have to talk to people. Right. And talking to people, and you get a lot of bias, you get a lot of different information, you get, suspect. It's tough. It's long, it's hard, it's arduous, it's not accurate, it's not data driven. And so, we were like, man, this is, if we look at sales, if we look at marketing, if we look at other areas of the organization, this kind of used to be this way in sales. It kind of was this way in sales and marketing and PR. It's an unmeasurable thing. It's creative endeavors. Like sales is a great example. I had this debate with my head of sales at the time. I was like, oh, sales is easy. We have revenue and, you hit those numbers. He said, yeah, in fact, it's the hardest, because if you think about sales, I own really virtually nothing in the stack. I don't own customer success. I don't own the product delivery. I don't know how well we support the customer. I don't understand the procurement process of the customer itself. I really don't own anything, but yet I am solely responsible as an organization to deliver a revenue number to keep the business afloat. And if I don't do that, or my people don't do that, number one, not only do they not get paid, but they get fired after 2 quarters. Now, I'm not suggesting that's the case for engineering, but if you sort of look at sort of other organizations that used to be chaotic, used to not be at all data driven, and every organization had their own process and specialty, I think engineering in some ways, we've always felt like it's actually got amazing data. I mean, everything we do as engineers is tracked. If I write source code, I check it into a source code control system. If I deploy systems, I'm using a CI/CD system. I mean, everything I'm doing as an engineer has ambient tracking already built into our system. But none of that data is being used at all to really help create better outcomes and provide better visibility, at least have conversations about what's going on. And that was sort of our opportunity. We just kept saying, gosh, this makes so much sense. There needs to be an engineering performance management solution. There needs to be that sort of category, much like we have in every other part of the companies, emerging companies, because engineering is just too critical. It's too important. It would be like if the Dodgers went out and spent 20 or 30 or $40 million on a star pitcher and just said, hey, you're off on your own. Good luck. Let us know if you win some games, right? It would be ludicrous. No, they're going to surround that person or those teams of people with the best. They're going to hire the best, and they're going to surround them with all and give them all the tools, all the infrastructure, all the statistics, everything they need to be peak performance. And we should treat engineering the same way. I think it's a craft. I think it's important to our civilization as technology becomes more and more important. And I think we ought to treat it as such. And we also need to be accountable to the outcomes. And back to your original question of why, engineers wants to know why. What are the things that I'm doing? How do they impact what outcomes the business is achieving?
Right. And then it also opens up the opportunity for how you can be better, because
That's right.
I was looking at it with Nolan, and I was like, my first thought was, how do you game the system? Like, if this is going to report on like quality of code, if it's going to report on these different types of metrics, the first thing is when I see metrics is how do you game the metrics? And the coolest thing about it was, as we were exploring that idea, the only way to game the metrics is to become a better engineer.
That was Nolan and I spent a lot of time on this. You know, like any system, you know, there's always sort of flaws in the system, right? But that's exactly right. We always sat back and said, can we create a counterbalancing system by which if you manipulate one thing, it actually either positive or negatively impacts another sort of counterbalancing weight, if you will. And what's interesting about that, to your point, is it actually starts to make you think about gaming the system in a positive way. It's no different than happens in sales. If I game it in sales, I want to make more revenue, right? I'm going to try to find now. If you do things wrong, if the commission plan is sort of not done well, then obviously yes, you might have holes in that commission, and you exploit it for maybe not the benefit of the company. Or if marketing, if you have sort of the wrong signal and you spend too much money in one channel that doesn't actually produce sort of outcomes, then maybe that's not necessarily good. But in all these things, I agree. It's like, how do we create good behavior that really helps great engineers continue to rise to the top? And it's not really about performance of the individuals, although of course that's always inherent in any time you measure anything. But it's always that old quip: if I don't measure it, how do I know to improve it? I mean, if I couldn't sit down with you, I mean, I should be able to sit down with you if you're the CFO. And I'm the CTO. I should be able to sit down with you and say, look, Joel, we really need to spend about $1 million doing CI/CD, and we're going to put this new piece of software in called Circle CI, and we're going to really spend 1 quarter really investing internally in automation, so we can really. And what we're going to get for that is we're going to get better cycle times. We're going to get a higher quality. We're going to be able to respond to customers faster. In fact, let me show you. We're going to be able to actually do 500 more features 6 sprints later. And that's going to drive X amount more revenue. So we could keep doing what we're doing, and we're going to have sort of the results that we have, right? Or we could spend some money and do some automation. Here's what we're going to get from a business standpoint. And so that's an advocation of engineering to get better, replatforming or better tooling or better infrastructure or making better technology decisions. But it's also then tying it to an actual specific outcome that the business can understand. Right now, all of a sudden, my CFO says, okay, I can track that. I can understand what I'm getting for it. It's just not yet another tool you got to spend. I don't know what I'm getting it for it, and you can't explain it to me because it's too difficult. And to me, that's sort of the executive to executive or executive to sort of senior executive or boards that really is hard to do right now. It's a lot of narratives in our experience, a lot of trust me. And of course, we do. I mean, if I've got a board, if I say I need to do something, they're going to trust me ultimately, at least until they, at least until I don't do it a few times, then they maybe don't trust me anymore. And the same thing happens in boardrooms and executive rooms, and and then vice versa. Like if I'm inside the organization, let's say I'm a product manager or a head of engineering for a group, product, I should be able to do the same thing. I should be able to advocate up to my management or to my peers within my organization about what we're trying to do and what it's going to impact. And I should be able to sort of tie that 360 to the whole organization. And I think that it's going to make, to your point, great engineering is all about high performance. It's all about, building better things. That's inherent in what we do as engineers. We're always refactoring. We're always trying to build the next best thing. Engineering is never static. It's always dynamic. It's always changing. That's what's cool about our industry. But with that, I think we need to sort of bring sort of the performance side of this to bear and help companies really understand what we're getting for that.
Yeah, you're always weary of the person who wrote code a year ago and is like, yeah, that's awesome.
Well, as we know, there's technical debt.
Yeah.
There's vulnerabilities. If you don't have good distribution of code spread across the team, right, and you're sort of vulnerable as a company. Or worse, I'm like the only engineer that when there's an issue that happens, I'm the one that has to get called on the weekend, right? I can't go on. There's always those cases where I can't go on vacation, or I'm worried, not to carry my laptop because, and nobody wants to live that
way. Maybe me a little bit. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
No, I didn't.
Certain heroes want to do that, but it's not great for them. Or
yeah, no one's spouse wants you to live that way.
That's true. Well, that's true.
I don't know. I just was flashing back to carrying my laptop on vacation. I think that was less about being a hero and more about just loving to write code.
Well, that's me too. I'm actually going on vacation in the morning, and I've gotten to about 15 years ago. I got to a point where I just no longer carry my laptop, which is funny. If you know me, I work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, mostly, because like you, I like to code even when I'm not working. I mean, this is what I do as my hobby. And so I'm constantly doing it, and people are like, "What? You're not carrying your laptop?" No, I mean, I'm going on vacation. I don't need it. So I wasn't that way early on in my career and my marriage, but luckily I've changed.
Yeah, for me it was after having kids.
Yeah.
Like it's just like they're so small for so long, and like it's like, all right, well, first of all, there's no time because you're getting climbed on, but
That's right.
Yeah. So I was actually interesting topic, because you mentioned it a little bit. You said performance engineering management. I guess
Engineering performance management, I think, is how we're thinking about it. Who knows? The smart people at Gartner or yourself will come up with a really piffy name, but that's what we think it means. That's what we think we would call it.
I like it. I think it's super self-explanatory. But I was talking about it with Archana, which is the CIO of Atlassian, and she and I were like, what do we call this category? This is before I heard what it was called. Because there's a couple companies coming out in the space, and the way you explain it's so logical. Like the first time I saw it, I geeked out because as an engineer, I thought it was super cool, right? Doing projects in teams, and I was like, oh, this is really, really neat. But then the moment you said, I guess the stickiest line for me is like, you could sit down with the CFO and have this conversation about strategically this office operating more efficiently than this one, or you could have build a real business case more than just a trust me, or that's the smart technology guy, we got to trust him type deal. I like the data driven approach and the transparency. But we were talking about what the title is, and so I think that's a great working title. Now, are you finding that when you're talking with new customers, like the response, do you ever get people who are shy to buy it because it's like a newer category, or is everyone just like, oh my God, water in the desert, like I'm so happy we have this now?
Yeah, I mean, part of it's our own confirmation bias, because we talk to people that probably care a lot about this area. They don't know what it's called, and they don't even know it's even a category. They're just looking for a solution to a problem. And certainly we're like any startup, we're focusing on early adopter type companies and category kind of leaders, if you will, that care about this. But yeah, I mean, I think it's been fascinating. I've probably talked to 1,000 CIOs, CTOs, CEOs, CFOs over the last year and a half, at least 1,000, probably more, but let's just say 1,000. And I've only had virtually maybe one that said, "Nah, I'm good. I don't need to worry about this." And it's sort of like, it's sort of obvious, right? I mean, in fact, what the biggest challenge I think as a category, or as a set of people trying to solve this problem, is it's almost become sort of conventional wisdom that this can't be solved. Like we've almost sort of like, at least outside of engineering, sort of like, oh yeah, we can't track that. I'm not going to try. They tell me I can't. And even with, of course, within engineering, you would run into people that say the same thing. Oh, it's not measurable. Oh, you just can't count lines of code. And of course, we would agree, right? I mean, any single data point. It's like looking at a sales, like it's looking at a sales pipeline and said, oh, they had a meeting, so I'm gonna count that deal. And it's like, well, no, you're not gonna count one single meeting. You're gonna look at the totality of the sales campaign for every customer, across every territory, across all the various factors in the pipeline, and then you're going to forecast. You're not going to just take any one single event or one single data point. And so I think the challenge collectively we all have is that in some ways, on one hand, it's so easy to explain the need for this and you get an immediate response. But the problem is people not necessarily out seeking for it, because in a lot of ways, they've sort of said, oh, this can't be solved, so I'm not even going to try. Now, I think that's going to change a lot. I would think, in my opinion, if we look out five plus years from now, I think we'll look back and it'll be like anything else. It'll be like, I can't believe we did it this other way. And we look at like marketing, we look at sales, we look at a lot of organizations that way now. And I mean, it would be crazy for me, if my marketing person wanted to go spend, which he wants to go spend a bunch of money in marketing, user acquisition or whatever, for him to come to me with a plan that didn't have by channel, what do I think the MQLs are going to be? What's the cost per conversion? What's the effectiveness across the various channels, and where am I going to place some bets, and where am I going to spend money? And then what am I going to get for that? Like, it'd be ridiculous, right? And then to him to tell me, we're not going to track any of this. We're just going to run these dollars, spend the money, and we're going to hope for the best, right? It would be crazy. I would say, go back and try again, right? I mean, he wouldn't even, of course, come to me, but, and I think we're going to look 5+ years from now, and I think it'd be very similar in engineering. I think it will look back and say, wow, like, I can't believe we did it that way. That's crazy. And so I think that's why this is such a big opportunity, because I do think that it is so obvious, if you will, if we or others like us can solve this problem, which I believe we're far on that path, it's a massive opportunity for everyone, and all boats rise in this category.
And I love it too, because one software alone, like the fact that you guys plug into multiple softwares with all your data, it's like you have productivity screens essentially inside of everything, like
right.
to some degree. But the thing that was cool about you guys, it's like a 360 productivity.
That's right.
And it analyzes all of the data to give you like this complete view. And when I saw it, I was like, I need to let the world know this exists.
Yeah, and I think what's cool is like the super secret, don't tell anybody kind of thing is, we'll just keep it on this podcast, is that I think what happens is, for our big opportunity, I think, is if we can make it easy to plug virtually anything inside the engineering toolkit, if you will, into Pinpoint. And then Pinpoint becomes sort of this Uber business operations platform, if you will, both to help engineering, but also obviously, like we talked about, outside of engineering. And I think that's a huge opportunity. And I think what will happen if we can be successful is we'll reorient the engineering stack itself, everything. And we obviously had a play at this at Appcelerator with our marketplace and our extensions and our community, but it'll be a very similar thing here technologically, but a much different impact. If we can effectively become the canonical, if you will, data model for engineering, independent of what tool you use, independent of what process you use, independent of what language or technology or how, what location, that's super, super valuable, we think. And that could be a huge opportunity as a platform company.
So we know where you are today with Pinpoint and sort of how you got there from Appcelerator, but I want to take it way back, right? The way back machine. I want to take it all the way back to, little Jeff. When did you first fall in love with technology? Like, what was the hook? What was the moment?
Yeah, so the moment for me, I was 12 years old. I started with a TI 994A, so I'm of that generation. Sort of gaming was sort of Commodore 64, Commodore 168, Atari. I saved up enough money and got some money from my parents and bought a TI 994A. Funny enough, at Rich's, I don't know, that's a department store. I don't even know if they're around anymore, but they used to sell computers, right? This was even before, sort of the Apple. And so Apple was my next computer, Apple IIc. And I was just of that generation of kids growing up in the 80s, writing software. I started writing software. I was obviously writing games because that was as a kid at that age, that was what I cared about. That was sort of my worldview, was games. So I created a little company called Bizarre Software, and we wrote a breakdancing game, me and my stepbrother. And back then you would sell things over newsletters. Basically, it was a Beagle Brothers newsletters, a couple other popular kind of computer geek newsletters, and that's how you would literally write in and send a amount of money to somebody, and you would get a in that day it was a little tape, and you could play the game. That was sort of my love, and through sort of middle school and high school, I just kept up in that way. And as technology improved very rapidly, of course, during those years, eventually it became the Apple, the Mac, and eventually then the IBM PC. I just kept writing software. My parents owned a business, and so when I was in high school, I wrote some software for them to automate their office. They had typewriters, and I wrote software. I wrote a database software in FoxPro back then, and helped them.
Yeah.
Remember FoxPro?
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote a FoxPro application to put they had filing cabinets of just files, and they would type up a contract and mail it in surface mail, right? Mail it to somebody. They would mark it up, send it back. And this was a multi-month process, right? And so I helped them put their database, if you will, create a database of all their people, their contacts, and their, people they did contracts with. And then I helped them create a word processing template that they could put all their contracts in, click a button, fill out a little thing, click a button, it would print it. And then I got them a fax, and then we would fax it, and that sort of changed their business dramatically. They started putting we started off with like a standalone computer in the sort of the side that somebody would go to within a year, we had computers in everybody's desk, and everybody had a computer, and that sort of became the way they worked. And yeah, that was sort of my early foray as an entrepreneur and as building things. Did a few things for other people, and I kind of took a detour. A lot of my friends, of course, like everybody else, went into college right after high school. I went into the military.
Oh, nice.
I went into the U.S. Navy, and I studied avionics, electronics. So I was basically electronics warfare stuff in the Navy. And I worked on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier during the first Gulf War. And so that was sort of my training. I was still doing computer-oriented stuff. It was a lot more hardware at the time. But I was doing, of course, software stuff on the side while I was in the Navy. And then I got out of school, and I briefly went to college on a GI Bill for 1 year. But of course, as an entrepreneur, I started a company in in college, and I ended up taking a leave of absence to start a company, and grew that company, and then started another company, and here we are today. So I've never really been employable. I'm mostly self-taught, I guess I should say. And I've just been building software. When I say literally my whole life, I'm 48 years old, almost 48 years old, 47. I'll be 48 soon. I literally mean that. So I've seen kind of a lot of different stuff. I've pretty much programmed in every language, every technology, every kind of system, every kind of computer you can probably imagine.
That's amazing. So my start, my father would take me to work with him. He's electronics engineer. He got his start because he had a bad home life. So at 18, he went into the Air Force.
Okay.
And then they had education opportunities
Absolutely.
to become electronics engineer. He did that, and then he did a big set of time at out in Las Vegas at Nellis Air Force Base, and their big project, which came declassified he told us about 3 or 4 years ago, because it was like a 20-year classification.
Right.
But they put the first GPS system into the B-32 stealth bomber.
Nice.
So when
That's
you said
awesome.
Aviation Electronics, I was like, dude, my dad was on the team that put the GPS into the stealth bomber, and that was like a huge project that was like super classified. And
that's amazing.
Isn't that pretty neat, though?
It's pretty neat. Well, what blows my mind even to this day is, like, I was in for 4 years during the Gulf War, and what blew my mind was the technology that we had in 1992 or 1991. And I think about it, like, when I got out of the military, it just blows my mind how much technology and how much innovation actually comes from our military or from NASA or from these sort of types of government projects. It's amazing. And how far advanced they are. It's a little scary these days with all the things that are going on. But yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, your mind starts drawing parallels. It's like they showed me this like box in like the mid 90s or late 80s, and it was huge, and they were like, this is a GPS.
Yep.
Like this is the GPS. And I was like, that giant like multiple foot by multiple foot thing is the GPS. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, wow.
Yeah. And now it's on a little microchip that, is in pretty much every device in the world. It's crazy.
Yeah. So do you write a lot? Do you articulate your ideas, or do you speak?
I do. I speak quite a bit. I'm not a great writer. I do write. I wish I could write more. I would say probably Nolan's the better writer. But yeah, I mean, I'm an expressive person, if you probably couldn't tell. So I spend a lot of time speaking or talking, or I write a lot of code. So that's my level of expression is code, prototypes, showing people like, here's how it all kind of works. And that's how I do it.
Nice. Because I read your Medium article, about the 5 things you do differently after
Yeah,
the start of it. So I was like, oh man, I like it.
that was super popular.
Yeah. And the thing that I like about it is I would say I'm a speaker first and a writer second, right? Because when you write and it sounds like someone speaking, that's my favorite type of content to read.
That's
right?
me. Yeah. I try to write like I would just, if we were having this conversation, right? Because I think that's just the only way I know how to do it. I'm not a good writer. But yeah, that's just, that's exactly right. That's how I do it. Because I'm very similar to you. I would speak first. I'm very, very comfortable. I've spoken a lot over the years. But writing is, I don't get to do that as often. It's harder.
It's way harder. Yeah. And even when I take like Q&A sessions from the talks I give live and I condense them into writings for blog posts, just have different mediums. I've trained my team to do it. Yeah. And then I just kind of approve it and make sure the tone is really me, it doesn't get lost.
That's smart.
But one of the questions we get from the audience a lot, and I'd say maybe 20, 30% of the CTOs I have on have like co-founders or CEOs of co-founders, but you and Nolan are co-founders, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the questions I get a lot now that I have a co-founder here in front of me, relationships, incredibly important, but some relationship tips, some things that you and Nolan have learned throughout your career working together. Can you share some of the insight, some of what you've learned?
Yeah. Well, first of all, saying we have an amazing relationship. This will be our 19th year working together in our third company. And he's a extremely special person, and I have the most respect for him. I truly think of him as a partner above all else, and certainly as a friend. What I think is great about our relationship and how we work together, which is short of magical. I mean, that sounds corny to say, but it really is. We're probably the most different people you could meet in some ways. I'm an extrovert. He's an introvert. I like being in front of people. He hates it, obviously, being an introvert. He's a good writer. I'm a good speaker. He's a great speaker, actually. I'm an okay writer. It's sort of like we have a lot of compliments. He's phenomenal on the product. I'm phenomenal on the engineering and architecture and design. He's a great engineer, and I'm good at product. So it's sort of like what's interesting is we've just, for better or worse, or for however, I don't even know how it's worked out, we've just sort of staked out our own areas, and we figured out how to like take the best of like what we're both good at, and just we're super happy with our roles. I mean, there's never really been conflict. I mean, you have debates, and we certainly will have knockdown, drag out discussions, but in the end, we walk away and we always walk away with a unified, even when we disagree probably almost 98% of the time on implementation or different way of looking at it. It's not a fundamental disagreement. It's a disagreement about how do we approach it, or what should we do this versus that. So the sense of how we move forward is always the same. And there's always trust and unification about what we're trying to do. It's just a sort of different points of view, which we enjoy. That's why we debate it often, because we do have such different points of view that helps us come up with a better plan forward. And I think that's how, that's how it's been. We've been able to work this way, and we're really good at like coming up with product, because of this compliment. I think because what I care deeply about, if we just talk technology for a moment or product for a moment, what I care deeply about, he's kind of okay to like let me deal with it, right? Because he cares a lot less about those things, and what I care a lot less about, he cares deeply about, right? And they're both critically important to how you build a great product, right? The combination, and I would say rarely does one person have both, in one body, or one soul have that, and so what you end up having is like you have other people, of course, that fill some of those roles. And so I think one of the benefits we both have too is we're both deeply technical, of course, but we're also deeply business oriented. We can both go very deep in finance or marketing or other areas of the business, equally deep in those areas, both of us. So that also makes us very comfortable. Even if I hand off something to him for a while, like a marketing or helping me on sales or something because I don't have time right now, I'm totally fine with what he's going to go do. And vice versa. If I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus on this and I need you to go do this over here, he's totally fine with that for me. And we can kind of easily move between these things. And that's, again, I think that's somewhat rare. I think, a lot of co-founders, probably not, I don't specifically know what this is, but a lot of co-founders, you kind of have a business and a technology person, and that's sort of and that's not a bad trade-off. I mean, that's certainly a good trade-off. Or you have kind of two deeply technical co-founders, and they have a lot of overlapping skills. And I think like we don't. So like where we're strong, we're equally strong on the business side. So that means we can sort of easily move in and out of that. And we're also equally strong on the technology side. But like if we polarize it, I would go to the deep engineering side and he would go to the deep product side. He's got a much more fascination and expertise around really thinking about a business problem and really thinking about how do you express that in the UI, or how do we sort of suss out really what the use case is and what the customer might want to do, and the empathetic side of like the product that you need. I of course care about those things, but I'm always going to gravitate towards like how it works and like how do we make it scale and how do we kind of get a lot of engineers working on this and a framework around this so we can scale the engineering and all that. And so that's sort of how we divide the world. And I think we've just learned to be, both empathetic to each other, very, very trustful of each other, probably because, that only happens over lots of time. And that's probably how we've learned to do it. I don't know how to teach other people or tell other people how to do this because I just could never. I've had a co-founder before, actually a couple of other companies, and it was sort of this, and they were wonderful people. So, but it was more of this business, and I was a technology guy, and it was sort of just a different dynamic. It wasn't a bad dynamic; it was just different. I think our dynamic is unique and different, and super, super powerful.
No, I tell you what, I've talked to a lot of people. I like that you've done the 1,000+ because people say, like, for me, it's like, yeah, that's like two a business day, 2 or 3 a business day if you do the math out, right? But yeah, when you talk to that high volume of people and you get to hear, maybe 40, 50 co-founders, the way you describe the relationship specifically on your skills and strengths, that was super unique. I was excited while I was listening to that. Yeah. But the thing that was grabbing at my mind, what's the origin story? How did you meet Nolan?
Oh, great question. So I started a company 3 companies ago. It was a software telecom company. We both lived in Atlanta, and it was a .com, and I had another company I had started that sort of flamed out during the .com. It's called eHatchery. It was a Y Combinator sort of idea back in those days. Of course, we didn't have a Y Combinator then. And I was fortunate that as the .com world was blowing up, I took a little bit of money and we started a company called Vocalocity, which is a software telecom company. And Nolan was employee probably 5 or 6 as an engineer. So he joined us as an engineer through another person who kind of ran product for me, who had worked with him at another company. And so he joined, and I worked really closely with all the engineers. And so he was building out an analytics product. Actually, funny enough, kind of come around circle. He was building an analytics product for this company. We just started working really closely together, and over time, over the probably 6 years, that company before we sold it was about 6 years old. He just did a bunch of different things over in engineering, obviously. And right before he sold the company, he was running a labs group, kind of an R&D labs, looking at innovation and kind of the future products we could build. And I just really enjoyed working with him. And of course, I was working really closely with him because I was, driving a lot of the innovation. And we sold that company, and I really liked working with him. And so we just said, we should keep working together. Let's find a way to keep working together. And that's when we started Appcelerator. We decided between selling the company, or after we sold the company, before we sort of started really kind of getting going with Appcelerator, we said we should consult and we should build some apps for people. Technology, wouldn't call apps back then, really. So we should build some outsourced technology for people. We know how to build software. We had a couple of people that were with us from the previous company, And so we started a consulting company. That's what Appcelerator started as, a small little consulting company. And we had a couple of customers that wanted us to help them build some product. And that's how we started it. And then very quickly we got into titanium. That was sort of the origin into titanium. And we just kept working together. And we moved to the Bay Area, San Francisco, that year. And then we just doubled down. That was 2007. We moved to the Bay Area in 2008. So, and at that point, we just built titanium.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
And then I think you did give, like, as you were talking about your relationship with co-founders, it's not necessarily like teaching people, but just the way you explain it, hearing what a successful co-founder relationship sounds like. It's like you want to take marriage advice from the couples that have been married 20 years, right? Right?
Yeah. Hey, that's me in 2 weeks.
Yeah. 20 years?
20 years in 2 weeks. That's right.
Congratulations, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I tell people I've known Nolan and we've worked together almost as long as I've been married to my wife.
Right?
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
What's her name?
Her name's Jenny. Virginia is her legal name, but her nickname is Ginny. Ginny. Yep.
Nice. My wife's name is Michelle.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
How many years? Oh my God! Don't say
2.
We'll block this out. Jake's gonna take this and we'll
Jake's gonna edit this.
Yeah, he'll edit that one out.
Yeah, 2.
2.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, a little bit more than 2.
You got a little bit more to go.
I got a little bit more than 2. We have 2 kids. We just had our second one, a little boy.
Oh, great!
So we got
congratulations.
We got 19-month, 20-month-old girl, Aria, and then 3-month-old little boy, Lachlan.
Nice, Lachlan. That's cute. I like that. I have 3. I have 2 boys and a girl. My oldest is 19. I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old going on 25.
Wow.
A girl, and she's fun.
It's
grow up fast.
I know. It's amazing. Like you hear the whole like daddy's girl thing or whatever, and then like you don't realize how much you will love the kids until you have them. Like you just would do anything. Like it's indescribable.
Yeah, it's biological.
Yeah. It's like you wake up at 3. Like I woke up at 3 a.m. the other. She was having a nightmare or something, and it's just like, oh. And then you get in there, and then they like stop crying, and they're just like hugging on you, and like you're like, I am the hero. Like
that's right.
Like, and then all of a sudden it's like worth it. It's like, what next? Give me the next challenge. Yeah, man, that's exciting. And then you said you're in Austin, you're in Texas.
That's right. Me and my wife moved here late fall last year. Nolan's still in the Bay Area.
Okay.
I decided to move here. And then I brought a couple people with me, and we now have our headquarters here, and we've got there's 35 people in the company, and we've got about 20-ish people here in Austin, probably, maybe a little bit more.
How do you like it there?
I love it so far. It reminds me of like when I got to the Bay Area, maybe not as big, but when I got to the Bay Area in 2007, 2008, it reminds me a lot of that. It's certainly not as big and not as many companies and all those, but it's exciting and fun. And there's a lot of things going on in Austin. Austin itself, independent of technology, is such a cool place. So it's sort of this diverse atmosphere of lots of people, lots of interesting things, young people, everybody doing kind of interesting things. And so that's what I really like about it so far. It's really fun.
This year I visited like, I don't know, 20, 30 cities, but I haven't got to Austin yet.
Oh, you have to come to Austin.
Yeah. So now that I know you there,
that's
like,
right.
we'll bring the team out. We'll do some video. It's always good for like a LinkedIn post. And cause I think it would be cool to see that city. I know we have some connections past there, like to the universities. We have some people that, universities and the tech incubators there. So if you're not already connected to them, maybe would be useful.
There's some amazing stuff. UT is an amazing school. They've got a really good machine learning school, data science school. I mean, there's some amazing stuff in Austin. It's also like I'm traveling a lot between San Francisco and New York every month. And I'm always on a flight going back to San Francisco. And I would say half the flight are Bay Area transplants that have moved to Austin. It's so funny.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of people moving here. I mean, it doesn't hurt that Apple and Google and Facebook and all the, Amazon and all the big ones also have huge plans are already huge. People, lots of people here, they're building buildings.
Building rockets.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what I was like. I was going to say, like, why did you choose to go out there? Did you hear like Musk was building some rockets and Bezos is building rockets? You go out there. What made you choose? Like, how did you put your finger on the map and you were like Austin?
Well, I'm an engineer, so, I went through an engineering process. So I basically looked and said, some people might find this funny. So I said, okay, what state has low to no income tax? I don't want to pay any more than already I've had to pay. And where because I do travel back and forth between the coast a lot, I wanted to be somewhere equidistant ideally. And Austin's great because I can get to New York or I can get to San Francisco kind of in 3.5 hours on either direction.
Really?
Yeah. And then the time zone is nice because you're straddling sort of both sides of the time zone, East Coast and West Coast, pretty nice. And then it's just an up and coming tech community. It's like this kind of next cool undiscovered tech community. And it's all the big giants are moving here, which is sort of good and bad, right? I mean, we're going to have some of the same problems any big city has eventually. But it's also like, you can sort of have to some degree an unfair advantage if you're a well-funded Silicon Valley startup here in Austin. So whereas, in Bay Area, there's 10,000 other of just like you.
Yeah. And your money can go farther.
That's right.
Get a different type of feel. You get
the
talent.
Quality of life's just better. Yeah. I mean, it's different. I mean, I love the Bay Area. Don't get me wrong. I still spend a lot of time there. I have a lot of friends there. It's a very special and unique place. But Austin's really cool.
Yeah. Really so is Boulder. I was out in Boulder. And
that was one of the places on our list. Portland, Boulder, Austin. Actually, Nashville is pretty cool too. But I was
there last week.
Yeah, I was feeling like it was a little too far and it had some other things that, weren't didn't sort of check my list. Boulder was the same kind of thing. It was a little too inclusive, meaning like the community was a little too small, not in a bad way. That's actually a positive for most people, but it was also sort of hard to get in and out. And so I was worried a little bit about that, travel and otherwise. Yeah.
But Austin was just right.
Austin was just right. I don't know. A lot of other people are doing it, so I don't know if it's the right choice or what, but we'll see in a few years. It's awesome. I love it so far.
Well, the best thing about it is you make a decision.
That's right.
And then if you need to, you just make another decision.
Exactly right.
Right?
Exactly right.
Well, Jeff, dude, we made a podcast.
I know. It's amazing.
This is fantastic. Yeah, I know. And we did it. Is there anything else? It's not. Yeah. I was like,
our wives would not care about that statement, so I apologize to all those.
It's okay. Internally, I was like, let's roll with it because you've been a fun person to hang out with.
Exactly. No, yeah, it's been really fun. I really appreciate it, and you've asked great questions.
Well,
again.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick before we go, since we're still recording this whole time, people want to find out more about Pinpoint. How do they do that?
Pinpoint.com. It's spelled PINPOINT.com. So it's pretty easy. You can go to Pinpoint, reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to anybody that wants to talk directly. I'm a pretty open person. So jeff@pinpoint.com. Love to help anybody out there, independent of Pinpoint.
Are you on LinkedIn or Twitter more?
I was heavy Twitter for a very, very, very long time. I've tried to get out of Twitter. I still am on Twitter. Jay Haynie, JHAYNIE. I've cut my usage down to once a quarter, really. I consume it maybe twice a week now, and I try not to write too much. That was not the case 2 years ago. LinkedIn, of course, I'm still on, like everybody in the world's on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn's become a little bit too spammy for me. But yeah, and Medium, I love Medium, but again, I think there's some challenges there with their business model, and so it's good. It's not as fun as it was 2 years ago.
And we have a large audience, technical talent, scaling from individual contributor, lots of lead engineers, lots of CTOs, all the way up and through the stack, VPs, directors, all of that. The most ideal type of person, what type of culture does Pinpoint have, and who's the type of person that you're currently looking to attract?
Well, on the customer side, certainly it would be, engineering leadership at any level, right? We want to have conversations with people, again, independent of, I'm an entrepreneur first and technologist. At the end of the day, I just want to talk to great people about what they're doing and we're willing to talk to really anybody independent of pitching the product or selling them anything. So if there's anybody who would like to reach out, I'd love to talk to you about that. And then certainly, we're also really interested in trying to find ways to improve individual engineers' lives as well. I mean, that's not been a big focus yet to date, but in our vision, Nolan and I have a very, very big vision around that. We are obviously engineers ourselves, and engineers don't care. In my opinion, engineers just don't care about analytics. What they care about are like, how do we get better outcomes? How do you help me work? How do I get away from the ceremonial crap that doesn't help me write better code? And we have big ambitions, we think. Once we get sort of one part of the piece working, we're going to really focus a lot on that. And we feel like we have a good point of view and a background on how to help engineers.
Yeah, he alluded to that a little bit, because I instantly picked up on it in our call with Nolan. I said, dude, so if you gamify the system, that means that you have to become a better engineer. So where's the content that tells you like what you can actually do to be better? That just was like the natural next step. It's like, how do you help these people actually get the better outcomes?
Yeah, and I think there's interesting ways to meet developers where they're at and in the tools that they're at. Like developers might be in a Visual Studio Code or a JetBrains type IDE, right? They're not going to necessarily be in a dashboard, or they're going to be in a Slack channel or whatever. And so we've got really great vision and ambition around what we want to do there. So
I'm pumped up, man. I'm excited. The future is bright for Pinpoint.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful that you took the time out of your day to come hang out and talk about technology, learn about how you fell in love with it, the big problem that you're solving. That's like probably the biggest problem that I've come across this year. I'd say of all the products and all the services, this is the one. I'm biased because it's close to me, but being able to articulate what's going on in engineering is just, it's amazing that you guys are doing this, and I'm super grateful that you're spending your time on these problems.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate it. And we'd always love feedback. So thank you so much.
And then we're headed off to Sweden in like the next week or two to do some talks out there. We apparently have Sweden's got huge booming tech community.
Are you going to Malmo? Where are you going?
Malmo.
Yeah, I love Malmo. We had a really big, Appcelerator had a really big Swedish community in Malmo and other areas as well. So I got to go there a few times. It's a really awesome place.
It'll be our first time. So I'm excited.
Man, it's really nice. It's really fun.
Mm-hmm. And then when we get back from that, I think we've got some stuff in Georgia and then back to Tennessee, but then I'll let you know, because I want to come out and see Austin, meet all the people that I know there. And then we would always when we visit the companies, we do like little videos and stuff. That way it'll just get you more exposure and things.
Cool.
However we can help.
All right. Thanks, Joel, man. It's been great.
Yep. Have a great day.
See ya.